There we go. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that now. That's a lot cleaner than it was earlier. Okay, time to replace this very rotten tie rod end. Good morning. So in this episode I want to tackle the brake fluid on the Project S-Type. I'll just remove the lid here and bring in a bit closer. You can see that it's not in great shape. It looks really old. When I tested this with a hydrometer, it registered in excess of 5%, so not especially safe to use on the road. So my plan is to evacuate some of this dirty fluid down to the min level, and then once I've done that, I propose to use this handy bit of kit. Plenty of videos across YouTube introducing the brake pressure bleed kit. So this one is Nielsen CT5664. Looks very similar to the Sealy one and various other branded ones. Probably all come from the same factory. I went for this one because it has a handy catchment container which measures up to 1 litre of brake fluid. So it means that as you're bleeding, you can keep an eye on how much fluid is coming through the system. The brake bleed nipples take a standard 11mm spanner, so that's what we'll be using. And if I come across the car, we'll bleed in a certain order. We always start with the calliper or the wheel that's furthest away from the reservoir, and that's this left hand rear. And you can see here, just on here, there's a little cap, and if I try and just remove the cap, these should just pull off. Just encouraging that to come off, and you can just see there we've got our 11mm nut, and we'll be able to use that to perform the brake bleed. Right, straight in here. Let's add the brake fluid. Right, straight in here. Now I'm going to put this special cap. It's same size as the standard brake fluid reservoir cap. Place that on here. I'm just going to connect in the valve. Just pull back the connector and snap on. So, but before I do the pressurization, I'm just going to bleed this little setup by pumping on this until we start seeing some brake fluid coming out there. So hopefully this will let me do that. Yep, I can see the brake fluid coming round, and there she is in there. That's nicely bled. And now I'm going to pressurize the system to about 15 psi. I'm just going to go around, check the car, see if there's any leaks, give it about 4 or 5 minutes, then come back and see if the pressure is broadly the same. It's been about 5 minutes and the pressure's held steady, so I'm pretty happy with that. What I'm now going to do is release the pressure on the system, and then I'm going to make sure that the brake fluid reservoir is fully topped up with the new brake fluid. Then I'll recap it, and then I'm going to pressurize up to 20 psi, and then we should be in a position to start brake bleeding. And then I'm just going to pump in some brake fluid until it's up to the max. And so she doesn't overflow, I'm just going to release the pressure, like so. And that is completely brimmed. That's around 20 psi. So I've got my handy bottle here just suspended on a chain. So I'm now going to remove the brake bleed nipple cover. just a rubber cover that's on reasonably secure, so I'm just going to carry that off like so. And now I'm going to put my tube on there, make sure it's a good comfy fit, which it is. And then I'm going to attempt to release the 11mm bolt. Should be around about half a turn. Yeah, just making sure that we've got clean fluid. Yeah, that's looking a lot healthier. Let me back that off. Nice and tight. There we go. Release the thing. There we go. And I'm going to just go and check the yeah, a bit of a wipe up around here. So on the front caliper, these have the same sort of nipple, but this time there's a little cover that fits over, so you have to remove the whole thing to get access to the underlying nut. Reasonable amount drained from here, as you can see. Quite pleased with that. So just releasing the pressure. Gently screw, unscrew. There we go. So there we go. I've noticed that this is containing a fair amount of brake fluid, so I'm just going to extract a bit so I don't spill brake fluid everywhere when I remove the cap. So I'm just going to put the little cable in here and start withdrawing it immediately. Push it down a bit further. I'll just see about removing the cap. Oh, there we go. Well, that's all good. And actually that's a really good level. Okay, time to replace this very rotten tie rod end. So we're actually going to replace the whole tie rod here. Runs all the way down to part of the rear subframe. We've got a 15mm nut on there, and we've got I think a 13 on top. And I'll undo this from underneath. And then equally, just on the other side, under the petrol tank here, this is an 18mm long handled flexi head. So I've got that on the other end. So this is like torqued to around 100 Newton meters. So I'll look to use this long ratchet to undo that. And then once I've done that, I'll turn my attention to the other end and remove that, and then we'll compare that against, and there's the nut, and that's just its protective cover it's got there. Okay, once that's loosened, I then need to put a 10mm deep socket on the bolt on the other side, because then that enables me to start undoing the actual bolt. Good morning. Well, it's another new day, and last night I have to admit I lost my patience a little bit. This here is the original track rod or tie rod. That's the outer one. That came out nice and easy, no problems. That was a 13mm and a 15mm. 13mm on top just to hold it in place, and a 15 on this one, nice and easy. But this end was a pig, and you may notice the rather deformed metal here. Basically what happened, the nut came out so far, then jammed, and despite best efforts with WD-40 and other things, the nut just would not budge at all. So in the end, the angle grinder came out. Now there's not much room under there near the subframe, the fuel tank and the exhaust pipe. So it's very, very difficult. So it's kind of like a series of cuts I had to make onto the nut. And then eventually I was able to use some pliers. These ones over here, in fact, some pliers. And also my 18mm flexible ratchet. And I was able to get the nut removed. So that's good news, but it took way too long. It was way too painful, and using an angle grinder really was the last resort, but it was necessary. Just whilst I've got the old and new alongside, one of the things I'm looking to do is make sure I've got an equal length from this point to this point on both of these. So what I've done, I've actually measured from here where it goes flush with the bush all the way through to just where that little blue circular compression washer, maybe that is, I'm not sure. And I did the same on the old one on the same points as well, and it comes out at 49.5 centimeters. So I've been able to set this one, just undo that, and then I've been able to set the distance to be 49.5 for the left hand rear side of the car. So what I'll do now, I'll just take you underneath the car and show you the remaining troublesome bolt. Well, here's the subframe bracket which held the other nut, the troublesome one. And you can see there's a few casualty score marks from the angle grinder, just because I was very, very mindful that we've got a fuel tank here, the exhaust here as well, and the subframe. And if I just come around over here, this is the right hand side, you can see we've got the old one still in place. And just in there, let's move you up a little bit, there we go, just here is the nut, and exactly the same thing has happened. It's got stuck part the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten it a little bit and get some pliers on there, because this 8mm rounded off. I'll get some pliers on this bit here, and then get my 18mm ring ratchet and wind it in a bit, and then see if I can clean it up. I'm going to use some more WD-40, and I'm also going to use a wire brush to see if I can remove some of the corrosion, and hopefully, if I'm really lucky, it might back off. If it doesn't, then options include the nut splitter, or back onto the angle grinder, cutting this bolt off, because it's quite problematic. Let's see. Well, it's a good old faithful angle grinder again. So this is my 115mm angle grinder. I used a 1mm cutting disc, and just over here you should be able to see the results. I had to make a couple of incisions here and here in order to free off the nut. 15 on the bottom and 13 on top to stop that moving round. And of course it's anti-clockwise for going, so there we go. So I've just extracted the tie rod arm. Quite straightforward once you lift this pin out of here. So there's a nut that we just released earlier, and then with the bar in place, tie rod bar in place, you just lift it out, and then because the other end's already been extracted, it's a case of just lifting it and removing it. So it has just started raining quite steadily here, but you can see what I've done. I've literally gone and jacked up, I've got a block under here, jacked up the arm to allow a better angle for this. You can see here I've now fitted that in. And what I did, I used some, I'll just get it out from underneath the car, sheltering from the rain. I used some of this. This is the red rubber grease. And what I did is I smeared it on the top and bottom here, just to help aid it in. And then I'll just use the soft mallet just to knock it into place. And then I was able to put the link in and fasten it all up. So that's all fine. I've done it on the other side where the subframe is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try and fit up the remaining tie rod for the other side. So on here, and some like that. There we go. Nice. So let's move that up a little bit. Just push it through to the subframe end so it goes right into the hole, and then I've just got it sitting in here ready to get manoeuvred in. That's now in. If you do struggle with alignment, then you can use some parallel punches, one either end, just to bring the tie rod end into alignment so the bolt can pass through. So I've just got the bolt pass through, I've not got the nut done up or anything like that. What I'm going to do next is start fitting the nut on here. Let's get this 18mm on there, and then I'm just going to use my 8mm spanner here just to hold her in place like so. Now it should be good to start doing it up. Thread this on manually, any cross threads or anything. There we go, and go all the way up. So just some red rubber grease on this side. So we've got the 15 going underneath to do this up, and then we've got the 13mm just holding it in place. So do it up the right way. So these are on about 50 Newton meters. Just going to check the track rod adjusters just to make sure they're reasonably tight. There we go, that tweak. And finally, to complete the job, I just cut some of those plastic cones that came with the new tie rod end, and just managed to get a bit of plastic covering the vulnerable bit of the thread, just to protect you from the crap being splashed up on the road. I've done the same on the other side as well. Every little helps, so that hopefully if we have to replace the tie rod ends again, the tie rod arms, then it won't be so laborious and involve angle grinders and stuff like that. Well, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video, found some of the tips quite useful. Until the next one, thanks a lot.